shit that somebody gave a book a bad review. Like,
Really?
you're literally Michael Crichton. Like, that's fine.
I'll wipe my tears on these $100 bills that stuff my pillow at night.
Like, I can fucking log onto Twitter at any point and find people saying that, like, I'm a fucking CIA agent and, like, a piece of shit. My podcast's terrible. And it's like, I don't, whatever, man. Like, like, to quote from a ska musician I love, no matter what you do, it's going to piss people off. Like,
I know what you're talking about. Everyone loves me.
Yeah,
everyone adores me. I do
go.
not have neoconservatives and alt-right people in my emails wishing death on my child at all because I draw Popeye. Nope, never happens.
You definitely have left-wing creatives who kind of can't get over criticism too.
Oh, no, I can name like 5 cartoons off the top of my head.
But it does seem to be, I think, for whatever reason, it happens to a lot of these right-wing guys who have a lot less overall criticism to deal with. Like, Scott is not being deluged in hate mail. One kind of weird dude writes a book about Dilbert that doesn't sell very well, and he never gets over it. Like, he is obsessed with this years later still.
Is it because the first time he wasn't Special Boy Scott?
Yeah, I think it's like the first time that he had to analyze if, like, he was what he was doing, or someone was trying to, like, critically analyze his work. And, like, when you critically analyze somebody's work, you will notice, like, flaws in it and stuff. Like, I've read critical analysis of my work and had to be like, oh, you know what? I may actually alter some things about what I've done because or what I'm doing in the future because I think this person has a point. You know,
sometimes you have, like, everyone can improve, and not all criticism is hatred.
Yeah, and I think that for Scott, the fact that criticism exists is, again, it puts him back in this comfortable place of wondering, maybe what I'm doing won't always work. Maybe I won't always be
a strange love, stuff. Chrome Bison, a dick wizard. I mean, sun wizard. You said Dracula's dick, sun wizard, so I was like, dick wizard. Okay, actually, that might be kind of cool to be a dick wizard. But I mean, like, does that mean that your dick has magical powers, or that you have magical powers over dicks, or are you a giant penis that is a wizard? If you're a dick wizard. The bullshit bills, what's bugging me? Oh, yeah, I don't blame you. I do not blame you. The big beautiful blue. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. No. It's bad. It's bad. The big beautiful bill, it's bad. It's bad, and it's going to be bad. I wish I knew, like, oh man, we're all living in the fall of Rome, and they're blaming like trans people and shit. I have nothing to offer but the truth, And they know trans people got nothing to do with it. They just hate them. So, yeah, we'll just do that, I don't know what makes these people the way they are. But then again, think of all those idiots and assholes in high school. I mean, they didn't all just die. They had to go somewhere. You get to enjoy me in 120 hertz on my new phone? What are you going to do with all those hertz? So many hertz. But yeah, I don't blame you for being, like, upset about that. Mamas wean them too soon. No, I think it's just that some people just get off on cruelty. They just get off on being cruel and stupid. You know, like the fact that they love the fact that they're dumb because it frustrates them. It frustrates everybody else. You know, they just want to act like they're the bee's knees. Like they're the best. Oh, we brought Jesus back. Jesus, you know, our Lord. I mean, maybe you heard of him. He didn't like me, you know. I like me though, and all that shit. Yeah, I kind of wish they'd eat themselves to the planet. I kind of. I don't know. Some people just gotta believe that their shit don't stink. Some people just gotta make life has been unfair to some people, and I don't know. I really don't know. I really don't know. Yeah, I really don't know. I'm not really celebrating 4th of July this year, I'll tell you that. You know. Don't feel like I want to celebrate America right about now. Trump withholds nearly $7 billion for schools with little explanation. Okay. You know, there's just it's narcissism. It's just pure narcissism. You know, they can't stand to have the way that they look at the world challenged in any way. Can't do it. Can't do it. So they have to be like and have a bad comb over. Let's see. Oh, it's some Fox News shit. I don't need to fucking. Oh yeah, and our cities are all failed states and like everything. You know. Fuck, man. Fuck, man. I don't know what to say about that crap. It was long ago decided outside of my hands. You know, we're not the moneyed class. We get to get fucked. We get to get fucked. Let's listen to more about Scott Adams here. Like, this thing is almost done. Or at least this part.
Handle that fear. I do think it all comes down to that for him.
Yeah.
And that's what this episode comes down to. This has been part 1 of the Scott Adams series. Randy, this wound up being more than I had expected.
That's my fault because I talk too much and I'm probably
No. Thank you. No, come on.
No.
Randy, you got any pluggables to plug?
Yes, I draw an online comic called Something Positive at somethingpositive.net. It started off as a bunch of dick jokes. Now it's aging in anxiety and dick jokes. And I also draw the Sunday Popeye comic at comicskingdom.com/Popeye.
Oh, what?
Oh, man. Yeah. It's frustrating, right? Because what's the problem with the Big Beautiful Bill? Well, it's basically it feels like the end of democracy, and because it feels like the end of democracy, there really is no way to successfully communicate that gravitas. You know, what that means. That we're going to be seeing, like, the end of a cherished way of life. And it gets doubly frustrating when you think of the reasons for it. When you think about how it happened, and what did Rorschach say about the gutters overflowing with blood and scabbing over? Well, he was a fascist. He was a fascist. The problem with Rorschach is he never wanted to save anybody. He never was a hero. He just wanted to be the punisher and executioner. You know, but I look at it this way. People have lived through this. People have lived through this. The urge to fight will dawn on us once again. And who knows? Yeah, in 100 years, history books will tell people how Bin Laden won. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You know, they wanted to topple the New World Order, and they did. And then conservative forces in the world decided, hey, we need to punish queer people because they're the reason this is all happening. And the thing is in a way, in a fucked up way, you can actually blame moral decay. But the moral decay was the prejudice and the hatred. That was the moral decay. It wasn't the loss of quote-unquote family values, because they had long ago lost those. They had long ago lost the real family values. They really had. They sacrificed it to capitalism. You know, they sacrificed it to capitalism in a big way. Well, Ozymandias didn't save the world. That's the other thing that a lot of people didn't understand. I got it. Ozymandias did not save the world. He just became a terrorist. The point wasn't that Ozymandias was right. The point is that he was wrong. Because what's the world going to do in response to that? Yeah, we're all going to get together, and then we're going to create bigger and more powerful weapons to aim at space, a fictional enemy. All he did was prove that the enemy didn't need to be real. That's the point of Watchmen. That's the point of Watchmen. The enemy is always imaginary. But the harm to people's lives is real. Was he based off a character from the Turner Diaries? That I don't know specifically. I don't know if he was inspired by that specifically. He was inspired by Mr. A. and The Question. Also, the Kitty Genovese thing didn't happen. There was a girl named Kitty Genovese. She did die. But it wasn't because nobody called the cops. It's because the cops did it. It was because the cops did it. You know, I don't even know if that was known at the time that Watchmen was written. You know, but like, the bad news is that you live in a fascist police state. The good news is that you kind of always have. The fight of the last election wasn't. It's kind of funny. The last election really was against two foes. One, apathy. That was a big one. But the bigger one was fascism. Kitty Genovese? Oh, yeah, look it up. It's hard to explain. You know, yeah, do we live in a fascist hellscape? Officially, now we do. We now officially do. You know, I mean, it's, you know. You know, everyone, you know, some people are talking about the midterms. I'm like, are there going to be midterms? Is there going to be a general election? I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, I always had trouble figuring out how everyone was responsible for her death and not the fact that cops took 45 minutes to respond. Yeah, exactly. They didn't take 45 minutes to respond. They were already there. They did it. They raped and killed a young girl. The NYPD. The boys in blue. Of course they did. Of course they did. Yeah. They're getting their fascist wet dream that lives in. Well, here's the funny thing. They think they're getting their fascist wet dream, but the reality is that wet dream only exists in their heads. You know, it only exists in their fucking heads because companies are just gonna, like the rich and companies are just gonna take more and more, and unfortunately, like George Carlin said, they'll get it. They'll get it all. They'll get it all. They can take anything away from you, including your dreams of a better life. They're allowed to just take it. And they will. They'll mine out America. They'll completely mine us out. That's what they're doing. They're taking all the money. taking all the fucking economic value out of America and taking it. We're all going to be, if we're lucky, we'll be Ireland. And not modern Ireland. We're talking late 1800s Ireland. You know, if we're lucky, we'll be a second world country, not a third world. But, I mean, who the fuck knows? They're already canceling elections in Florida? Oh, for real? Yeah. Well. I can only mourn this so much. You know, I do a lot of mourning over the death of democracy. I just. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. The more I look at it, the more I think we're going to turn into East Berlin. You know, we're going to have a Stasi, and that Stasi is going to monitor us through social media. When are they going to have enough and openly rebel? Well, here's the thing. They kind of already have. People are openly rebelling. This is the part where you realize the revolution will not be televised. Now, I've also gone on record as saying, oh, yeah, you bet the revolution will be televised. It just won't be on network or cable TV. You know? Or as someone once said, yeah, the revolution will not be YouTubed. And I'm like, oh, it'll be YouTubed. I don't know if anyone will watch. I don't know who will watch. But it'll be YouTubed. It'll be live streamed. It'll be all that. Americans can't rebel? Oh, I don't know about that. That I don't know about. I mean, we're seeing the conservative forces rebel against the fictional version of liberal politics that exists in their fucking heads. They're rebelling pretty hard. I mean, it's a little, the rebellion's a little pathetic, but I mean, it's working. The good thing is that there are ways of rebelling all over the place. Oh, you hope it ends? Oh, it'll end. It'll end. Yeah. I don't know what shape America will be in. It might still be a country by the time it ends, but it will end. There's only so far something like this can go. And the internal pressure is too great. We've already got 1% of the population that is willing to openly protest the government. All we have to do is triple that. And the thing about open resistance, the big thing about open resistance is all right, what I'm about to say is very, very dark. It's very, very dark, but it is true. they're not going to be able to kill all of us. Period. They can't. It's too difficult. I worry about one of us nuking one of us destroying one of our own cities for real. But I don't see things continuing much long past that order. Because that kind of thing is not easy to get away with. In reality, Nero did not burn Rome to the ground. It was destroyed, but he didn't do it. He may have helped set the conditions, but he didn't actually do it. If America destroyed one of its own cities, it would be one of the first countries in history to do it. You would first have to declare a civil war. Which is going to be a lot trickier than you realize. It should be a lot trickier. Do I think that he would be so deranged that he would just nuke one of the American cities? Yes. I think that he is so deranged he would try. I don't know that he would succeed. And even if he did succeed, I don't see things lasting much longer than that. Not on planet Earth. But like, he would be done. Somebody at that point will shoot him in the fucking head. China ever destroyed one of its cities? No, they've invaded, but they've never, like, a country, I've never heard of a country missile striking itself, you know, or its functional equivalent. It's always civil war or an invasion that does that. Because the only way that he can... Oh, yeah, they will. Don't worry. Don't worry, they will. You know, if that happened, someone would. Yeah. Invading a city, I can see. Turning it into an absolute police state, a military police state, I can see. Nuking or missile striking one of its own cities, that's a different matter.
Peoples before you start take out someone people actually like.
Yes. Also, the amount of loyalty that would be required. I don't think there would be enough people left to make that machine run. Because you would just have pogroms left and right. That's one of the things that happened to the Nazis. I'm not worried about it lasting. I'm worried about what happens in the meantime. But like I've sometimes said, we don't have to survive. We don't have to keep living. You know, the samurai contemplates death 7 times before breakfast. Oh boy. But fuck that. Let's hear about another asshole who isn't in political power. Let's listen to some bullshit. Let's listen to some shit about Scott Adams and what a douchebag he is.
What is dilling my dogs? I'm Robert Evans, and this is Behind the Bastards, a podcast about Scott Adams, a man whose self-awareness is so minimal that he often, his hands clip through his writing desk like he's a character in a video game from the N64 era. I don't know. How was that, Randy? Did that work?
That's perfect. That is exactly what I would say.
Okay, excellent. All right, so we have Randy Mulholland, artist behind Something Positive, a wonderful webcomic, and now the legally the brain, at least the limbic system of Popeye the Sailor Man. Randy, how are we feeling as we come into part 2 of this? I am just
so thankful that you invited me on an episode that probably does not involve child vivisection.
Oh, no child vivisection. He is going to, by his claim, kill a kid in this. So
oh good.
But I don't think he really did. I think he's just taking credit for it in a way that's kind of more upsetting than if he just killed a child. I don't know. Maybe that's not right.
At least now there's not a kid who's dead. But that's a weird fucking.
Oh, there's a kid who's dead. Don't worry. Don't worry.
Good.
A kid dies in this episode. We're fine. It's all good.
Well, I mean, isn't that a responsibility of every episode of Behind the Bastards? Yeah. At least one child must die.
No, as soon as I announce that a child is going to die in this episode, you know, like the last scene in Return of the Jedi, where it like goes around the galaxy as all of the people are celebrating in their different planets. It was that was the Behind the Bastards fans. They're terrible people.
The Reddit is just a flame.
Yeah. It's Coruscant. It's the Coruscant of our. I don't know why I'm doing Star Wars. Everyone's tired of Star Wars. Think of another. Imagine I did another one, a different
Star Trek
thing. No, I feel like that one's pretty saturated too. What's one nobody knows about?
Farscape.
Farscape. That's
Farscape
right.
Is goddamn amazing.
Yeah. Imagine I did a Farscape.
There you go.
God. Okay. So. Back to Scott. Early in his career, Scott Adams started receiving requests for public speaking engagements, and he realized that this could be a good side business for him. You know, colleges wanted him to talk, and also a lot of like corporations wanted him to come and like give speeches for their employees because they would, you know, you're some manager, you see people.
Oh, no, I didn't say the family. I said the samurai. The samurai contemplates death 7 times before breakfast. You know, slightly paraphrasing the Hakagore, or the Book of Falling Leaves, also known as "Damn, dude." I know you're depressed, but goddamn.
Have like Dilbert cartoons up over their cubicles, and you're like, oh, well, let's pay this rich man money that could be going to races for our workers so they can hear this weirdo talk about how he draws Dilbert. That'll make them happy. So Scott, realizing that this was a thing that he might make some bank on, enrolled in a Dale Carnegie course. And this is while he was still working at Pacific Bell, but drawing Dilbert. His employer was kind of willing to foot the bill because they saw it as beneficial to them. And Scott didn't know how to do any public speaking. And so he felt like this would help him. Now, do you know anything about Dale Carnegie?
That name sounds familiar, and it doesn't make me happy that it's familiar.
You've all like most people, you may not recognize his name, but everyone's heard of this guy's book. He's the guy who wrote How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Oh, okay. Yeah, my dad had that book. My dad had
Yeah, I'm going to guess something approaching 100% of our listeners had one or more family members with this book in their house. It's an incredible. It's one of the best-selling books in the history of like writing. Say what you will about it, that's undeniable. Dale Carnegie was born in 1888. He's an American writer and a lecturer. And yeah, he got rich writing this book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. It is still a best-selling book to this day. It is sold probably like just an unbelievable number of copies. Whether or not this is a good thing kind of depends on your perspective. But as far as I can tell, I don't think Dale, there's a lot you can say about him. He was kind of like, I would say like a lame man, but he was not like evil, right? He's not like, this is not one of those like, I'm subtly writing this book about like how to influence people so you can like sexually assault them. Like, you're talking about like modern, like Andrew Tate types. Like, he's not that kind of guy. He's just sort of like a little grifty, I guess, in kind of his like, I don't think he is a grifter, but like the way he talks is very appealing to them. And the things he's telling you how to do is kind of appealing to them.
Who's going to want that book more?
Yeah, it's definitely like that's who we'll talk about that in a little bit. But yeah, so Dale, he had been kind of he'd been like a salesman who kind of quits his career midstream to become an actor, and just sort of like in order to make ends meet, he starts out teaching public speaking classes like while he's being a stage actor, and he finds out that he's like a lot better at that than the actual acting, and that there's a lot more money in it. During one session with a bunch of people trying to learn how to do public speaking better, Dale started asking his students, he's trying to like coach them how to get up in front of a room of people and talk. He starts asking his students to talk about something that made them really angry. And he noted that like people who were really reticent, who had trouble getting up in front of people and talking, when they started talking about something that pissed them off, they were able to get over their fear of public speaking more easily. Right. Which makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that's not That's not that. I mean, it's kind of worth noting. It's worth being the guy who writes that down. I'm not taking anything away from it, but that's not like for us today. And that's most of like Dale's actual good advice is stuff that today we're just like, well, yeah, if you're pissed off, it's easier to like not think about the fact that you're nervous in front of a group of people or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Dale kind of used this and some other revelations he had teaching these classes as the basis for a book that promised to improve self-confidence for the average reader and teach them how to change the behavior of others by altering their own behavior towards those people. There's nothing inherently wrong with this, other than that some of Dale's advice works pretty well. And kind of more to the point, I think the actual problematic thing is that like, number one, it teaches this kind of overly ritualized, rule-based approach to how to like influence and talk and convince people of things, which can kind of, how D&D and stuff works, right? Where you've got like,
yeah, I play D&D still. So.
Yeah. Where you've got like, okay, here's a character and this character gained a level. And so I pick a feat and this feat works with these other feats and it lets them do these other things. It's very, there's kind of a hierarchy in terms of how a lot of the skills work, right?
Yeah.
Where you get one skill and that allows you to get these other skills. And then you can do these kind of like more complicated acts. That's not really how like charisma works, but books like Dale's, I think, can convince people that that's how it works, that if they just read these books and stack these tactics, then they'll gain these like eventually they'll get to do sort of the speaking equivalent of like a whirlwind attack as a barbarian, right? Where you're
finally I have mobility.
Yeah, exactly. And that's really not how this stuff works. But I kind of the fact that people start to believe that's how it works. Again, Dale's not like a pickup artist, but this is where we get pickup artistry, right? Like it all kind of descends from the way that Dale talks about how to win friends and influence people. And kind of giving Americans advice on how to be more confident and convincing is kind of like handing a loaded and chambered pistol to a drunken chimpanzee. It's just not a great idea.
No, it's really not.
Yeah, we are, of all of the peoples of Earth, Americans are the ones who needed less self-confidence. A couple more hang-ups would be nice. Yeah, some humility courses. Maybe make us I don't know. We don't do so great when we're scared either. I don't know how to fix America.
That's
Let's
how
move on.
Get extra murdered.
Yeah, we should probably just move on. I want to read a quote from his book, or about his book, from an article I found in The Cut, which interviews science writer Maria Konnikova. And Maria is the author of a book on cons and conmen called The Confidence Game. And here's Maria talking about Dale. Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People is kind of the unofficial con artist's Bible, because a lot of those tactics he talks about in terms of building relationships and being successful in business are ideal for getting people to trust you. One of the really easy things is creating a feeling of familiarity. You're more likely to trust someone who feels more familiar to you. It's even enough to exploit something called the mere exposure effect, where, say, you just go to the same coffee shop as someone every single day, and they may not consciously note you, but all of a sudden you feel more familiar. And a lot of Dale's advice is kind of stuff, again, it's not like necessarily all that problematic. And in fact, it's kind of like The Art of War, in that if you like read it today, because some of the things he wrote about have been so like spread so widely, you'll be really bored. It'll seem it's like very basic stuff to a lot of people today. It's all not necessarily like bad advice, but it's just kind of like basic as hell these days. Like people who obsess over this book today, like people who obsess over The Art of War, are kind of like, I don't know, man. There's like better stuff. Like it's been 100 years. Like there's better books on convincing. Yeah,
it's nice to know it if you want to kind of go back to the basics and see what stuff started. But I mean, no.
Scott's going to kind of religiously love this guy, right? Like he takes this on. This is kind of taking the place of religion for him. And this is going to build what does really in a lot of ways replace religion and any kind of like political sensibility as the thing at the core of Scott's understanding of reality and how it works. Like what I was just talking about, that sort of people take this book and they interpret it like it's a D&D manual, right? Full of like feats and skills. And as they level up, they can like stack these feats and skills. Starting with this Dale Carnegie course, that's increasingly how Scott is going to view the world.
I mean, I get it from a certain viewpoint of being like the awkward nerd kid. You're just like, why can't I have a cheat code? Why can't there just be a direct manual? But someone like him who's like, but I want to make sure I'm always the special boy.
Yeah.
Well, and it's manipulation starting off.
The other danger of this, like there is some value if you want to be a public speaker. Public speaking is like a technical skill, and like any other technical skill, if you want to do that for a living, it's not a bad idea to study it, to study what other people have written about it, to try to like learn more about it. But when you have this kind of very engineer focused view of how something like public speaking works, of how persuasion works, of how charisma works, then one thing you're not going to do is ever listen to other people, right? Yeah, because they're like the CR 5 monster or whatever that you're trying to figure out how to like drop before it can do any damage to you or something. Like they're not
apparently right.
Yeah,
they're like half CR at best.
Yeah, exactly. That's how you're gonna look at the world, and that's not a great way to look at the world if you want to like have humility or be capable of like change and personal evolution. Anyway, I do think it's interesting that these Dale Carnegie teachings, how they may have influenced what I always considered to be one of Scott's more reasonable philosophical claims. And this is going to take us back into the weeds a little bit. So Lawrence Peter was a Canadian professor who eventually came to teach at the University of Southern California. His specialty on paper, he's a professor of education. But over the years, Peter felt drawn to studying organizations and why they succeeded or failed in different circumstances. And he came to believe that the best way to do that was to study hierarchies within organizations and how they functioned and how they became dysfunctional. He started to call himself a hierarchaeologist, which is both a fun term. It doesn't spell well, but if you like say it out to yourself, it kind of works pretty well. And yeah, he saw himself as like someone who studies how different hierarchical systems function and don't function. Lawrence was also a funny guy. He was kind of renowned for peppering his different writings and essays and papers with witticisms like, "Noblest of all dogs is the hot dog. It feeds the hand that bites it." That's a Lawrence Peter original.
Okay, I mean that's a fun little quote. I can see that.
Yeah, it's not a bad little jape. In 1969, Lawrence co-wrote a book called The Peter Principle. The nut of the argument he made in the book was this, quote, In a hierarchy, every employee tends to rise to his level of incompetence. In time, every post tends to be occupied by an employee who is incompetent to carry out its duties. Work is accomplished by those employees who have not yet reached their level of incompetence. Now, that is something, number one, if you've ever worked in any kind of large corporation, you will be like, yeah, that's how shit works a lot of the time, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's pessimistic, but unfortunately, it's not inaccurate.
It is not, it's going to be familiar to basically 100% of people who have like worked in corporate America, right? Mm-hmm. Even if you don't believe that's how it always works, because obviously that's not how everything always works, but like everyone encounters people who are in this position, right? Where they were good at something. And that's the whole premise of The Office, right? Of the American Office. Michael Scott was a really good salesman who got promoted well past his level of competence, you know?
I've never seen The American Office. I'm sorry.
Oh, well, that's the premise of the show. Okay. It's all based on the Peter principle, right?
You're doing great, Robert.
Thank you. Hey, let people watch that.
I think it should be noted that this is one of the few times he, like, a pop culture reference of a man's podcast, and the guests didn't get it, but Robert did.
Randy, you are very, very, very correct.
Yeah. You know what? I'm sick of all of you. I'm gonna go listen to my Ariana Grande records.
Wow, you did it! Oh my gosh, that's growth.
Oh wait, I was trying to pronounce it wrong. Did I accidentally get it right?
You got it right.
Son of a bitch. What a shameful moment for me. I'm going to go read the name of some British towns to get my mojo back.
There you go. Oh, my God.
All I'm saying is I've infiltrated your mind.
Yeah. No, today, you know what? The only way for me to get back on top, I'm going to read Welsh street signs. See how that goes for me.
Jesus Christ.
Small backwoods Massachusetts town names.
So yeah, Lawrence Peter, writes this book about how people get, people who are competent get promoted past their level of incompetence. And that's how like hierarchies work. Now, Peter is not pretending to write like a super serious book of psychology. He's not trying to write a business book either. It's a satire, right? Or at least at various points, he will say that it's a satire. And there's a lot of like joking bits in it. For example,
Machiavelli's The Prince was also a satire.
All of the evidence that he cites to support his argument comes from what he calls his hypothetical case file. So he's not like citing from like real things that happened. He's citing from like hypothetical stories, some of which are probably based on things he heard or things that happened to him. But it's very tongue in cheek, this book, right? And he would later claim that the principle is the, quote, key to understanding of the whole structure of civilization. That's kind of, and again, he's like sort of joshing around a little bit, but he's also like, there's something deep there. Like this is like, I think a valuable warning and a valuable observation about how hierarchy very often tends to work, right? Because this happens throughout government, throughout the business world, in militaries. Like this is just a thing, and it's
education, nonprofits.
Yeah. And you can go back 10,000 years, looking at the best documentation we have of different rulers, of different and you'll find evidence of the Peter principle. It's all throughout human history.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a bit of like he's taken the piss a little bit, but yeah, there's quite a bit there. Now, the business community almost instantly adopted Lawrence's idea, even though he was kind of like joking with it. This is a hugely influential text for business people, for MBAs and shit. And today, the Peter principle is taken very seriously by people who are like professionals at organizing corporate structures. In a few seconds Googling, I found a Harvard Business Review article on, quote, overcoming the Peter principle, and a Forbes article titled New Evidence the Peter Principle is Real. And I'm going to read a relevant quote from that real quick. 3 professors, Alan Benson of the University of Minnesota, Danielle Lee of MIT, and Kelly Shue of Yale, analyzed the performance of 53,035 sales employees at 214 American companies from 2005 to 2011. During that time, 1,531 of those sales reps were promoted to become sales managers. The data show that the best salespeople were more likely to A, be promoted, and B, perform poorly as managers. So like there's actual data, behind this. Obviously not a universal rule, but quite robust. So Scott Adams presumably learns about the Peter Principle while he's getting his MBA, right? Like he's kind of doing his MBA right at the time when the Peter Principle is kind of going viral in corporate America. There's almost no way he wouldn't have read about this and probably was at like conferences and stuff where people talk about it. And in 1996, just as Dilbert was blowing up, he decided to put his own spin on the Peter Principle in his first text-based book. So this is not like a book of cartoons. This is like a nonfiction book, The Dilbert Principle. The Dilbert, I was
wondering if that was the book. Yeah,
it sure is. It sure is. Which I read when I was like 10.
What
several
kind of
times.
10-year-old were you?
I was a 10-year-old who like I would go through sometimes 3 or 4 books in a week. Like I always wanted stuff
but I
to
didn't read things like that. I was like,
well, you know, I got a lot. So my uncle, who had all the comics, was the guy. Also, he worked at a bookstore, and he would bring back what were called strip cop books, which is like books that had sold.
I know exactly
Hey,
what you're talking
Torgrim, how
about.
you doing? Thanks for the donation. Yeah,
Those
we're
are
just kind of
great.
hanging out.
So everything I read either came from those books or from his library.
bitch about
and
Scott
yeah,
Adams.
he had a lot of Dilbert books, so I read a lot of Dilbert books. Yeah.
It's surprising. Like, I guess because also Dilbert came out when I was much older.
Yeah.
And when I think about like I was reading at 10 was like D&D novels.
Yeah, I read a lot of those. A lot of Dragonlance.
I felt very advanced
a lot of Weiss and Hickman.
Read, Scott Adams at that point. Like, like, oh, I've read Hitchhiker's Guide at age 10.
Yeah.
But, like, I remember trying to pick... Actually, I tried to pick up once. My dad had a copy of How to Win Friends and Influence People because my father was a union president and he did a lot of things. And I remember picking it up and he's like, you're too young for that. Go read something fun. And yanked it out of my hands.
That's honestly great parenting. Like, don't read this. This will turn you into one of these weirdos. Like, go read something that'll make you laugh. Now, I'm pretty sure at the time I read this, I was like veering between the Wheel of Time series and Dilbert books. So, you know, I was a weird kid.
Weird whiplash.
Yeah, I was a weird kid for sure. Anyway,
at least we're reading gore books. That's all I care about.
Yeah. Good God, that's another episode. We'll get to that one of these days. So
Gorgons.
Yeah. This was basically the Dilbert Principle, as Scott describes it, is basically an inversion of the Peter Principle. Instead of observing that hierarchies tended to elevate competent people past the level where they are good at what they do, Adams envisioned hierarchy in business as a defense mechanism to elevate incompetent people to positions of upper management where they don't actually have anything to do and thus are less likely to interfere with the people who actually produce work. Right? Now, if you also, like, you've probably, I think this is less common for people in the Peter Principle, because I think most of us have stories of upper management who have, like, fucked around in our shit. But, like, if you've worked in a company, you've seen this, too. Both the Peter Principle and Scott's Dilbert Principle, these are things that you can observe in the world, right? These are not, like, yeah. And I think both principles can be useful observations about the way organizations work and about pitfalls to avoid when creating organizations. The Peter Principle, I believe, is a lot more durable. It describes a much more widespread, I would say nearly universal phenomenon. I can think back to like my own career at Cracked. All of my friends and I started out writing funny articles and got promoted to managing teams and like doing a lot of work that we had absolutely no aptitude for, because like we just wanted to make our funny little japes, and suddenly we're like handling all of this like employment shit. And you know, there was a tough learning curve there.
That sounds kind of hellish. I'm not gonna lie.
There were, you know, it was good and it was bad.
Knows when to
it worked better than it should have for a long time, but like I can definitely say. And it's not like comprehensive, right? Because we all still wrote articles and made videos and did the stuff we were good at. I think the thing that I would say, if I was going to like make a maybe a more generalizable, you know, version of the Peter Principle, is that competent people get promoted to the point where they spend less and less of their time on the thing they're best at, right?
Yeah, I can see that.
If you're not, you have to, or at least you have to be very careful to avoid that happening, right? Because it's just kind of like naturally what hierarchical structures do to people who are good at shit. So yeah, I do think that Scott's Dilbert Principle, while I have seen versions of this in my own life, is a lot less widely applicable. For one thing, upper management constantly makes decisions that impact the lives of people who actually produce shit and interfere with them getting stuff done. And like Scott knows this, he parodies this in a lot of his early strips, right? Like management making dumb decisions that fuck shit up. layoffs, in order to jinx stock prices that force out productive workers in business units, that kind of shit. And it's one of those things where, like, I will give Scott some credit because there's in this book kind of some valuable observations, and I don't think most of it's like, I don't think they're valuable observations to like adults. I think this book is pretty basic for anybody who's been out and lived in the world. But as like an 11 or 12-year-old kid, there were a couple of things that I found pretty influential. And in fact, I'm going to read one passage that I encountered at a young age that I think is a pretty healthy thing for a young man to encounter at a young age. Here's Scott. I proudly include myself in the idiot category. Idiocy in the modern age isn't an all-encompassing 24-hour situation for most people. It's a condition that everybody slips into many times a day. Life is just too complicated to be smart all the time. The other day, I brought my pager to the repair center because it wouldn't work after I changed the battery. The repairman took the pager out of my hand, flipped open the battery door, turned the battery around, and handed the now functional pager back to me in one well-practiced motion. This took much of the joy out of my righteous indignation over the quality of their product, but the repairman seemed quite amused, and so did every other customer in the lobby. On that day, in that situation, I was a complete idiot. Yet somehow I managed to operate a motor vehicle to the repair shop and back. It is a wondrous human characteristic to be able to slip into and out of idiocy many times a day without noticing the change or accidentally killing innocent bystanders in the process. And I think that's actually a pretty good observation. I think it's also this obsession that we have through media with like hyper competent protagonists. Like isn't real. Like there's nobody who's like that I've ever met in my life. And if you kind of accept that you will be, if you're able to accept your incompetence in given situations, you're a lot less likely to, for example, try to wire your own house and wind up electrocuting yourself to death. Like,
yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, I don't know. It was a useful thing to come across as a kid.
It's not a bad lesson. Like
it's not a bad lesson.
Sometimes you're the idiot.
Yeah, and everyone is. The world is too complicated for you to know how to, like, you can know how to, like, from the ground up, how like the Android or iPhone is coded, right? You could be an engineer at Apple or Google and know everything about like how the actual software on your phone works. But like, you probably don't know how to solder the entire thing together. And you certainly don't know how to like mine the rare earth minerals and like put together we're all out of our depth. If you really think about it all the time, it's other people around us who know what they're doing and who have figured things out and that keep shit going, right? Like, I don't know how to operate a power plant, but thankfully there are people who do. It's like humbling and valuable to think that way.
I thought you were going to say, I don't know how to run a podcast. And I was going to be like, yep.
Sophie,
wow.
Wow. Hurtful, but yes, I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't even know what a podcast is. Like, I've been trained to shout at this blinking light when the box in my cage turns on. And that's what all of this is.
That's how you get the food pellets.
Yeah.
Did you see that it's now blinking blue, which means ad break?
Speaking of shouting from your cage at a blinking light, I've just said I think that Scott's got a good observation here, a useful thing for certainly a young person to encounter. The caveat to this is I don't believe Scott believes a word that he's written there. Or at least if he did at one point believe it, he no longer does. But I don't think he ever really did. For one thing, this book, The Dilbert Principle, sells 1 million copies, which causes his ego to metastasize like a cancer and devour his mind. I kind of think the more I've learned about him and the more I've learned about the stuff that he read and that's influenced him, I think his like, we're all idiots, especially me, I'm dumb a lot of the time, kind of stuff, this kind of self-deprecating thing he does, I think it's a calculated shtick rather than evidence of humility. And I think part of why I believe this is this line I came across in that interview with Maria Konnikova. And here she is again, describing a strategy from Dale Carnegie's book that is really popular with con artists. There's also the Mark Antony gambit, which comes from Shakespeare, where Mark Antony begins a speech by saying, "I come to bury Caesar, not to praise him." He says the opposite of what he then goes on to do, but he primes people to think that he's on their side. And I kind of think there's a version of like Scott's doing a version of that with this, right? Like he's saying like, we're all idiots, especially me. I'm dumb most of the time. But he's also, that's being packaged as like, and look at how smart I am for realizing this and delivering this to you. Like there's a little bit of, we could call it like kayfabe there, right? Yeah. So Scott's books get increasingly popular from here on out. The next year, he publishes The Dilbert Future, which, of course, I also read as a small child. The subtitle of the book was Thriving on Stupidity in the 21st Century. It's a pretty forgettable book. You would call it like a pop futurist text about how technological development will impact people in the future. Again, pretty forgettable. It does include the prediction technology and homeliness will combine to form a powerful type of birth control, which is a joke in the book, but I think Scott's going to kind of wind up pseudo incel in a lot of like his ideology and a lot of the things he says. I think you could see this as like a precursor to that. He is currently, like this week as we talk, chatting with Andrew Tate about how nobody likes sex really. Like, it's not that good.
Wow. Tell on yourself there, buddy.
Yeah, you might be telling on yourself a little bit there, Scott.
It's like, we were just see a screen capture of someone like saying women don't actually orgasm. I've had sex with women that've never like. Oh, buddy, no.
And well, it's, you know what I'll say for like the women don't enjoy sex guys? That's fucked up, but they generally do enjoy sex. They just don't think women do. Scott's like, boy, we all actually hate sex, right? And it's like, for one thing, Scott, there's like, if you want to like explore this, you might learn some stuff about yourself and come to accept some things, but it would take having kind of a more nuanced and plastic view of human intimacy that I think you're capable of having. But I don't know if you were more of a self-reflective guy.
Well, learning he was ace.
Yeah, I don't know that he is, but some of the stuff he says is like, well, Scott, if you think that you've never maybe, I don't know. A more thoughtful person might like come to some conclusions about himself through that. Scott just decides that everybody feels the same way and we're all lying about enjoying sex for some reason, which I don't know. Feel about that however you want. So the weird part of the book of The Dilbert Future comes near the end when Scott starts writing about his habit of making affirmations for the first time. He gives a couple of examples of times that affirmations worked for him, and both repeatedly gives a caveat that he's not saying there's anything supernatural happening here, and also kind of leaving the impression that he thinks he's discovered some kind of magical reality hack. Over time and far too many books, Scott's feelings on the Dilbert principle and affirmation. Do you know what affirmations are?
Yeah, it's a whole like speak your truth and the universe will.
Yeah.
And the way secret, isn't it? Basically,
it's the secret, right? You have to ask if you tell the universe what you're going to get or what you want, like it'll provide it for you. There's some rules to it generally, like the way Scott sees it. He has to like write it down a certain number of times a day. You have to be really specific about the thing that you're going to do. So it's not just like, I want to do well in this class, but I'm going to improve my score on this, exam from this to this or something like that. You have to be very, and like, I don't think there's actually anything wrong with this idea. Like if affirmations help you focus your mind, focus on building skill in something, I think for reasonable people, this thing can be kind of a version of like meditation, right? I
think for most people, the worst you can be is just a harmless thing you did.
Yeah.
And it's a personal ritual. And even that can be still calming.
Yeah, it can be calming. It can help you you get up in the morning and you write your affirmations. That helps you focus on like the things that you're going to work on. That's perfectly healthy. If that works for you, like that's a great thing to do. Scott is, I think, kind of inherently hardwired to go really dogmatic about this stuff. Like he presents himself as very much like an atheist and a rationalist, but he builds these kind of like labyrinthine rule systems about this stuff rather than being like, affirmations really helped me focus my mind and I did well on that test. He has to like set up these kind of increasingly arcane rule systems. He's the kind of guy, again, if he was a little more open-minded, a little cooler, he would have been like in the 1800s, like one of these guys writing books about magic. He would have like convinced himself he was a wizard, and probably would have been a healthier, happier person.
I too can say if you study and believe you have magical powers and are a wizard, it can make you quite happy.
Become a wizard, Scott Adams. You'll like
it
more.
No, he could stay away from magic.
A weird racist on YouTube.
I look forward to his new book, Dilbert Mancy.
Yeah, Dilbert Mancy. Come on, Scott. At least give us that. We're owed it.
The pointy-headed Gandalf.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, come on. So, over time, kind of this Scott's feelings on the Dilbert principle and affirmations will evolve into this kind of labyrinthine scientifico-religious ideology with one goal, and that goal is explaining why Scott Adams deserved his fame and incredible wealth. Right. And that's the really problematic thing about Scott here, is that he's focusing all of this stuff. He's not just using it as like here's, how you can improve your life. He's using it to kind of a priori justify like why he's earned everything, like why luck didn't play into his life as much as it really did.
But why does he care? Like, because no one else is like asking why does Scott deserve money? Like, no one, that never comes up.
I think it's simple, which is that if you are really successful in a field where the odds are long and against you, as Scott often notes, and you suddenly make a shitload of money and become famous, it's pretty natural to be terrified that it might end, because you never fully understand why it happened, right? Yeah. There's always people around you who are just as talented, who work just as hard, and shit doesn't work out for. And the fact that some people make it and some people don't is kind of scary, right? And I think, again, the mentally healthy thing to do is kind of embrace the humility that should engender in you, and have that influence how you treat other people and how you try to give other people opportunities and try to level the playing field and try to provide options for people who benefit from luck less than you. The unhealthy way to do it is to find justification. Some people use religion. Scott's weirder about it, for why you deserve, and it's because in Scott's case, I discovered the secret rules of the universe and, hacked my way into being an influencer. I'm a master persuader.
Was really in that egg he found when he was a child, not just $10, secrets.
The secret. And that's kind of the primary immorality at the center of Scott Adams in a lot of ways, I think. So before Scott sort of degenerates to a Trump reply guy, which is where this is building towards, he got the chance to make his own television show. On January 25th, 1999, Dilbert launched as an adult animated sitcom on UPN, the network where I watched Star Trek Voyager as a little kid. It was the highest rated comedy series premiere in network history, but very few people watched UPN, so that's not much praise. The show had quite a lot going for it, though. Larry Charles, who was a Seinfeld writer, was on the development team. Danny Elfman, as we've talked about, was like the theme music, and it's got some great voices in it. Daniel Stern, who's Marv from Home Alone, did a lot of the voices. Kathy Griffin does a voice. Jason Alexander is up in there, from, again, a lot of like Seinfeld.
I remember the actor who did the boss, because he's a really good comedian.
I think it's...
I actually never really liked Seinfeld. It was never really my cup of tea.
Larry something.
Yeah. I forget.
He always played the really good smug asshole in the 80s and 90s.
The voices are pretty good. It's not like an incompetent show. Like, it's not bad. Whenever it comes online now, people who watch it as kids are like, well, the show was actually really good. I did rewatch a lot of it recently. I wouldn't say it's really good, but for an adult animated series in 1999, it's perfectly fine, right?
It was different. It was something that wasn't trying to be The Simpsons, which was rare at that point. And it wasn't trying to go the opposite direction of Family Guy, let's be as edgy and weird as we can. No, it's just it gave what it promised. It was Dilbert as a show.
It sure was. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Chris Elliott was Dogbert? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Larry Miller was the boss.
Yeah, it all the voices are all pretty competent. So here's all Scott says about it in his 2002 book, published a year or so after the show's second season and cancellation. In 1998, I started working on what would become the Dilbert TV show that ran on UPN during 1999 and 2000. We had a tiny operating budget, so I found myself doing more of the writing than I had expected. Now, I don't actually know what went on in that writer's room and how much of the good parts of the show were the Seinfeld guy and the other writers, how much of it was Scott. But you get a taste of Scott Adams in this series. His voice shines through. And when it does, it's often in uncomfortable ways. And I'm going to play you a clip now from an episode. And this is one where Dilbert's antagonist in this episode is a bad guy whose name is literally Bob Bastard. And Bob is trying to unfairly sabotage an invention that Dilbert made. And as a result of Bob being an asshole, everyone, and especially like the female engineer Alice, loves him, right? And Alice falls madly in love with him, even though he's nothing but a dick to her. This is a very uncomfortable scene, but like it's not hard to see what Scott's trying to say here. You get another little glimpse of that sort of attitude he's got.
I'm already bracing.
Mm-hmm.
What are you doing?
I'm not doing anything.
Why are you dressed like that?
I'm not dressed like that.
You're trying to look like him.
Don't be ridiculous. It's just that all my non-Bob Bastard imitation clothes are in the laundry. This is all I have left.
What has happened to you? Are you in Bob Bastard's camp now?
He has a camp? Cool.
Why do I try?
I think we make a terrific couple, Alice.
You really think so?
No, I'm just toying with your emotions. Since I caught you in such a good mood, can I borrow another $50?
Another 50?
Oh, forget it! If you're gonna lay some kind of trip on me, I'll see you around!
No, wait. Okay, here.
Make that $100. I'm saving up for a new mask.
What do you mean you're changing your name?
Well, seriously, don't you think it sounds good? Wally Bastard.
Have you lost your...
All right, that's enough. You get it, right?
Yep. Women fall for abusive jerks.
Yeah, women fall for abusive jerks. The unsaid part is not like me, Scott Adams. Why don't they love me? I'm so much better than all of the guys who get the... It's very... You see this all over the internet now. Scott was a trailblazer, ahead of his time with this sort of shit.
Being a whiny little piece of shit.
Yeah. You also kind of get signs of this, of kind of what is now for Scott an abiding hatred of all journalists, who he seems to think are unethical by nature of doing their job. He thinks it's like unethical to report on stuff that's happening in the world. This is now a pretty standard belief on the far right, but was less common in 2002, and it's pretty clear in this clip.
What makes you qualified to be a reporter?
I'm willing to violate anyone's privacy for my personal gain and then claim with a straight face that the public has a right to know.
All right, so not subtle, right? And it's one of those things that people who are remembering this as a good show, like, it's not bad for the time, but like, there's not a great density of comedy in these bits here, right? Like it's got its moments, but a lot of it's like weird and off-putting, and I think most of the off-putting parts are Scott's voice just kind of shining through clear as a bell. Anyway, the show gets canceled in 2002.
It got picked up by Adult Swim for a little bit though, didn't it? Like all the
it does like reruns and stuff.
Yeah, they also got Home Movies, which was also a UPN show.
Home Movies, which was a much better show.
Home Movies had
something to say about
that. Never. Like, I rewatch it every other year. It's so good.
It still holds the fuck up. I periodically find myself singing the Franz Kafka song.
Yes.
But Scott's show gets canceled, and now, if I were to ask you, why do you think Scott's show got canceled? What would your answer be?
It was a very targeted product on a rarely watched network.
Yeah, pretty reasonable thing.
I mean,
yeah, of course, yes. And Scott, to his credit, when he's interviewed about why the show failed in 2006, gives basically that answer. He says it was on UPN, a network that few people watch, and because of some management screw-ups between the first and second seasons, the time slot kept changing and we lost our viewers. We were also scheduled to follow the worst TV show ever made, Shasta McNasty. On TV, your viewership is 75% determined by how many people watch the show before yours. That killed us.
That would probably do it. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that Scott's, I think he might be exaggerating a little bit some of that, but like, yeah, that's pretty reasonable, right? Not a lot of people watched it. They moved around the time slot, so people didn't, like, that was more important back then. If you've only ever watched in the streaming era, you may not understand that. But this is not an unreasonable thing for him to believe. However, he's not going to stick with that opinion as to why the show gets canceled for forever. But we're building to that. So right in the middle of the period of the time when the Dilbert TV show is on the air, when it's in fact the comic is at kind of the height of its popularity, Scott decided to try to branch out into another business, the world of health food. And he's going to.
I've been waiting for this one.
Yeah, he creates a product called the Dilburrito, which he says is like, so Scott is like a vegetarian, and he's angry that there's not any kind of like good, fast, like microwavable food for vegetarians to eat that can fulfill all of their nutritional requirements. He wants something. Again, he has this kind of very mechanical at it, which is fine. A lot of people feel this way about food. I know people who they don't particularly enjoy it. They're like, this is why like Soylent's a popular thing with some people. So you guys have heard of Soylent, which is like this. They're these meal replacement sort of like, I don't know, shake is a little bit of an odd term, but like it's a drink, basically a drinkable meal, fulfills all of the necessary caloric requirements, and you can do it quick. And I know some people who do it because it makes weight loss easier for them. Some people, they just don't have a lot of time in the day, so it's good for. I know people who take Soylent because like when you're doing drugs for 36 hours with your friends, you might forget to eat, and it's easier to like pound a Soylent than actually like eat a meal when you're on so much ketamine that like the world is like melting all around you. Scott wants this because he just wants like a simple thing people can microwave and get all of their nutrients. He describes it as wanting to make.
It's not a bad thing to want. It's really
a fine idea.
Bad. Like
sure.
I don't eat a lot of meat, and I would love to have like just simple make this in 5 minutes.
Of course, it's the most reasonable thing he's ever wanted to do. He does describe it as the blue jeans of food, which I find kind of funny, but like there's appeal to that. So the problem is that Scott doesn't know how to do this. Like Scott has no idea how to make food. You don't get the feeling he's a great cook. And he certainly does not have any experience in like the business of mass producing food. So he launches this product, which he calls the Dilburrito. I would say not great branding either. It initially comes in Mexican, Indian, barbecue, garlic, and herb flavors. It's described as being a tortilla-wrapped comestible consisting of vegetables, rice, beans, and seasonings that contain all of the 23 vitamins and minerals that nutritionists say are essential. Now, when you jam as much nutrients as he's like, he describes it as like a vitamin pill wrapped in a tortilla. And when you shove all of those vitamins and stuff into a single burrito, it can have some negative consequences on your gastrointestinal tract. As Scott would later say, because of the veggie and legume content, 3 bites of the Dilburrito made you fart so hard your intestines formed a tail. It is a disaster as a product. Millions of dollars. It gets just lit on fire by this thing. I've talked to people who apparently ate them and said that they were pretty fucking nasty. And to be fair, Scott describes them as pretty bad too. So there you go. The Dilburrito. Kind of a funny little moment. But not evil, right? He probably caused, disaster.
I had friends, I had a roommate, we weren't roommates at the time, who, he was a tech guy. He was a vegetarian, bordering vegan. And he hesitated because he's like, well, I like the idea of fast food. I just don't know that I would trust a fellow nerd making my food. And then someone else we knew ate it and basically begged us to never try it because they basically thought they were going to shit their actual brain out. Like they described it as diarrhea so bad they could feel their capillaries moving out of their body. It's just like, nope, don't need that.
Incredible.
And like, I mean, what a weird
incredible
food around too. Because like there was a Dagwood restaurant chain in the mid-aughts. That makes sense. Dagwood eats a lot.
Yeah, if you're selling like the biggest sandwich anyone's ever seen, absolutely. Yeah.
And that's but like this is like, I mean, this isn't quite as bad as the Garfield restaurant they attempted in Toronto. Yeah. But didn't Adams also try to do a restaurant at one point? Or was I just...
He did do a restaurant. We have so much to cover. I don't think we're going to get into it. But he ran an unsuccessful kind of restaurant in the Bay Area at one point in time.
Jesus.
And it's very interesting. Like it is kind of like going to Dilbert like using him as the mascot for fast food is a little bit like, I don't know, trying to sell mace that's Calvin and Hobbes branded. Like, I just don't see much of a connection. And also I'm like, I don't know if I trust the Calvin and Hobbes guy to sell me mace. He doesn't seem like that's in his wheelhouse.
Charlie Brown brand prophylactics.
Yeah, the Charlie Brown condom. It works as long as, like Charlie Brown, you never have sex.
It has that little weird diagonal like line around his ass.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh
God.
Oh God.
Oh God.
Why did I say this?
Heathcliff brand off-roading tires. Like, why are we doing this? What's going on here?
Heathcliff, that might happen. That comic is so fucking weird these days.
Yeah, it does go off the rails. So this is all fun, but by 2004, Scott, there's some signs of some problematic stuff, but he hasn't done anything fucked up yet, really, in a clear way. He's expressed some odd beliefs, but he's not blaming diversity or black people for his failures publicly yet. Again, the book where that stuff that we talked about comes in from is published in 2008. But 2004 is the point at which things start to go really wrong in his life. Because of a legitimate personal tragedy, he develops the symptoms of a rare neurological condition called spasmodic dysphonia. And I'm going to quote from an article in brainandlife.org here. Adams's experience began in 2004 with what seemed like an extreme allergy-related laryngitis. I used to get laryngitis every May when my allergies were bad, Adams recalls. It would usually last a few days or a few weeks and go away, so I didn't think anything of this particular bout. That was the first of dozens of doctor's visits and an equal number of treatments over several years. I was diagnosed with respiratory problems. Then I was tested to rule out strep throat and acid reflux. From there, I went to an ear, nose, and throat specialist to check for polyps in my vocal cords. Nothing made a distance. I hit a wall. He tried a bunch of herbal remedies, and it's one of those things where, like, this starts out as laryngitis, but it doesn't go away, and it gets worse and worse, and he starts having very basic trouble talking. Right? Like, he's finding it harder and harder to speak. He's trying every scientific and also like herbal fringe remedy that he can come across because he's just increasingly desperate. You know, he's not able to go out and speak anymore. And first, his ability to kind of do public speaking goes away, but soon his ability to just like talk to his wife, to talk to his friends goes away. He's unable to kind of communicate very well. He starts getting angry and lashing out at people because he'll try to talk and they won't understand him, and he just gets like enraged at this. Eventually, this is what he says kind of causes the collapse of his marriage. And it really does seem like a
responsibility
nightmare.
for something.
Yeah, he kind of does with it. Like, it does seem like this has to be like a terrifying sensation.
Oh, I have like that's horrible.
Yeah.
I would I can't wish that on him. Like, that would probably be a legitimate tragedy. Like, that is a nightmare world to be in.
Yeah.
And yeah, you probably are going to lash. It doesn't make it right. You shouldn't be lashing out at your spouse or anyone because something happened to you, but I can get it.
Yeah, people don't perform perfectly in situations where they're both frightened and like something fundamental about their nature has been physically compromised. As Scott later kind of described, I felt like I was a ghost in the room. It's hard to feel connected to others if you can't talk and they can't listen to you. And yeah, again, sounds terrible. Obviously, this is the kind of thing that's going to give you some fucking PTSD.
I would like to think there's an alternate reality where he's like, so I decided to start investing into nonprofits that help people who are deaf or whatever. But I know that's going to happen. I know why, because that's not about him.
Yeah, he doesn't dedicate his life to helping others as a result of this. It ends with him unable to talk entirely for a couple of years. And he pushes everyone away. He basically lives alone in his home, not communicating with anybody for an extended period of time. He considers suicide, but eventually he finds via Googling his symptoms enough that there is a rare condition that meets his experiences. He finds a doctor who specializes in it. He gets diagnosed finally, and the doctor offers him a risky pioneering surgery. And basically the way the surgery works is they cut the nerve that goes to the main muscle that's spasming, and then they graft a new nerve in its place to prevent the muscle from atrophying and to stop the old nerve, which was like defective, from growing back.
That's kind of amazing.
Yeah, it's a really like interesting thing that they did. The treatment is about 85% effective. That the doctor who does it says that about 85% of the time it provides, an improvement or complete cessation of symptoms, which is like that's not bad odds, but also like a 15% chance that you never talk again is like that's scary. That's not low enough to not be terrifying, right?
That is a lot more than I would want to gamble on most things, much less my voice.
Yeah, it's scary, but like again, by this point he can't talk already, so he doesn't have any other options. So he has the surgery in 2008, the same year that he publishes the book where he blames all of his life problems on black people.
Of course.
And after 3 years of enforced isolation and near endless silence, he starts being able to talk again. And the way Scott describes it, the surgery works perfectly, and he's been fine ever since. Now, there is a theory, and you might call it a conspiracy. I don't know, conspiracy is the wrong term because there's no conspiracy here, but there's a theory that you get among people who like follow Scott and have followed him really going insane on Twitter and stuff, that something goes wrong in this surgery and it damages his brain, and that causes some of the behavioral changes that we see in him after this point. I don't have any evidence of this. I've never heard the doctor obviously like say anything about this. I don't know. Like, it is true that after he has this surgery, 2008, this is the year where he becomes like very rapidly, he becomes increasingly racist and aggressive online. But also, number one, I think I can see signs of the stuff that he would do later. And number two, I'm not saying there's no chance that something like that happened. That's a possibility. But like, rather than something fucking shady happening during the surgery, I find it kind of likelier that 3 years of not being able to speak, of losing every close relationship in his life, of being completely isolated is what causes the behavioral changes for the worst.
Yeah, that sounds a lot more like it. And honestly, if nothing else, just like you came out of this situation, like where you are facing a permanent life altering situation. Yeah, you may be like, fuck it, I'm just going to throw a caution to the wind. I'm a little hesitant to be like, oh, this brain, like, I feel weird about that because how can we know? Like, that's, I don't say that about anybody who has surgery, really.
Yeah, I think that it's more, I mean, think about America. Think about the COVID lockdown. Think about for how many people that period of isolation was the straw that broke the camel's back, that sent them spiraling into, like Ashley Babbitt, like, it doesn't, like we're all, a lot of us, most of us maybe, are kind of fragile at any given moment, and like this is an intense thing to deal with. I don't think I need much more than like, yeah, he lost the ability to talk for several years and it blew up his marriage, and he lost everyone who was close to him for a while and lived alone as a hermit, not knowing what was wrong with him. Like, yeah, man, I can see that fucking you up. Yeah,
I mean, like, even if like just like the everyone I care about left, or I push them away, no, that's what I'm like. Oh my god, like I just can't even fathom like how that would mess with anyone.
I can see you not becoming the best version of yourself after that, right?
You're either going to go on a mea culpa tour and try to fix, or you're just going to say, well, shit.
Yeah, this goes on for a bit.
Yeah. So,
but I'm kind of fascinated. I'm gonna get a coffee while I let this run. Hopefully I don't miss anything too important.
And in 2008, Scott publishes the book 20 Years of Dilbert, which is what I've been quoting from several times. It's where he repeatedly blames diversity programs for the great failures of his life. It's interesting because after this point, he also, like in this book, like he blames, losing his job, not getting promoted on diversity programs. And he blames now in 2008, he blames black people for the failure of his television show, saying, quote, "The show started out well, but in the second season, the network made a strategic decision to focus on shows with African-American actors. Dilbert lost its time slot and cancellation followed." And that's very different from the reasonable answer that he gives in 2006. It's also definitely not true. For the next 15 years or so, Scott is going to bring these incidents up with increasing regularity. In 2017, he tweeted, "I lost my TV show for being white when UPN decided it would focus on an African-American audience. That was the third job I lost for being white. The other two are in corporate America. They told me directly."
Oh boy. Okay, we're getting into it. Obviously, I got to pause rather than just get up because we're getting into it now. Oh man. Sorry about that. Yeah, I may just to warn everybody, I may need to cut this short. I know we've just been listening to this podcast, but I may need to cut things short because Guru's mom is in the hospital. She's expected to be fine. You know, the signs are that she will be fine, but still very scary. So I may have to like so that we're gonna see he's finding out what condition she's in, although like I said, the hospital said that, you know, chances are she's gonna be fine. But, you know, still like, my friend I think needs some like moral support, because it's terrifying to go through. So yeah, I think I will cut this short. I just didn't want to leave you guys completely. I didn't want to leave you completely hanging. Geez, it has been a day. Yeah. Like the odds are very good. Odds are very good she will be fine, as far as we know. But of course, parents get sick. That's not good times for you. You know, it's also going to be a little. Oh, Jimmy Swaggart died good. Fantastic. Yeah, there's also been a little some shit going down over the Countess's mom. The Countess's mom is also not doing well, although she's stable. She's not doing well in a more emotional sense, you know, because she just had her license revoked because of failing eyesight. You know, so there's been, but my point is that there's been a lot of like, oh God, like there've been a lot of like disasters happening in the last few days that have to do with like people's health and shit like that. So I should probably skate. And just completely be available in case something's in case I need to like spring into action. But I want to thank you all for coming down here. I especially want to thank Thorgrim and Flashman for their donations. You know, hate to cut it short. I did want to go on for a good while tonight, but like, you know, shit happens. So until next time, Ave Satan's Disco Inferno, and Satan and I love you all very much.